Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. I hope everybody is doing well. I'd like to, of course, acknowledge that it's Ramadan, and some of the brothers on the panel will be fasting, and some of the viewers, I'm sure, will be fasting or getting ready to possibly break their fast or even begin their fast today. Why I touch on this topic right now of fasting is because the show is titled The War on Gaza. This is the second Ramadan for the people of Palestine. And I was breaking my fast earlier today. And, within the Asian culture, it's traditional to have many, many dishes. And straight away it came to my mind, that what about our brothers and sisters around the world who do not have this type of nourishment, the water, the liquids, the vitamin tablets that I take, or the other supplements that I take. And it kind of like stopped me at my tracks. And without eating to my fullest, I left the table and I came up and prayed Maghrib, and now I'm here. But it really breaks my heart, brothers and sisters. And throughout this month of Ramadan, I really didn't want to do any streams. But the current situation, my emotion was drawn that we have to, COVFF and the South African Debate Initiative YouTube channel have been at the forefront of promoting, highlighting the plight of the Palestinian people. And even though we've received strikes, social media platforms have been hacked, emails were received threatening me to shut down my YouTube channel, trying to blackmail me, much more, we still continue with this work. So please, brothers and sisters, if you are able, I'm sure you are able. I'm not asking for any money like other Dawah channels or other personalities. All I'm asking for you to do is share the stream, share the link. That's all I'm asking. And with that, I want to narrate a hadith, a famous hadith, which we all should really think about. And this is one of the prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ, and I really want you to think about this. This hadith is in the book of Sunan Abi Dawud and is an authentic hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, the people will soon summon one another to attack you, as people when eating and invited others to share a dish. Someone asked, will that be because we will be small in number? The Prophet ﷺ replied, no, you will be numerous at that time, but you will be like the scum and the rubbish that is carried upon the ocean. And Allah will take the fear out of the breasts of the enemy and put innovation into your hearts. Someone asked, what is innovation? The translation in Arabic is wahan. The Prophet ﷺ said, the love of this world and the dislike of death. And this hadith, I was just talking to brother Muslim apologist about it, and how true Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is, that we are 2 billion in number, plus growing. But look how we are divided. We are divided in different ways. So, brothers and sisters, like once again, quick reminder, please like and share the stream. I've got a beautiful panel today with beautiful brothers who are passionate about this topic, just like me. And we are in probably 4 different continents right now. We got the Muslim apologist all the way from Malaysia, and our brother Recon Muslim from the USA, and our beautiful brother Yusuf Ismail from South Africa. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa
Alaikum assalam, brother. Ramadan Mubarak to everybody.
Of course. First of all, I really want to ask this question to Brother Yusuf, and we can go around talking about this. The ceasefire that has been broken. It's shocking how the media, social media, have been portraying the breakdown of this so-called ceasefire. Even within the ceasefire, 3 people were dying on an average, even within this ceasefire. Brother Yusuf, through your expertise, through your knowledge, what have you kind of researched so far regarding the aspects of the ceasefire and who broke the ceasefire?
Well, the reality is there was actually never any ceasefire per se, because I mean, we've discussed this even in the stream that we had a couple of days ago, where we focused on the point that there was a slight, a kind of a limit in terms of what Israel was doing and what they were not doing. In other words, they had kind of just mildly put their foot off the acceleration pedal somewhat. And what had basically happened is that that gave the charade out there to the global audience that, look, they were very much part and parcel of a ceasefire agreement, but there was no ceasefire as such. There was just simply a somewhat limitation of hostilities. Hamas kept all its obligations and all its particular, I mean, they never broke any terms of the ceasefire. But what was constantly happening was that, backed by this maniacal U.S. administration, which is obviously no different from the Democrats and the Republicans, just different sides of the same coin. The one basically will shoot you without telling you. The other one will tell you he's out there to kill you. He makes no qualms about his particular intention. But what was happening is that there were ongoing changes in terms of suggestions being made as to, for example, the increase in numbers. And then, of course, you had the kind of polemic by Trump where he was making this claim that we want all the hostages to be released, otherwise there's going to be hell to pay. Something to paraphrase, something along that particular line. And then he's emboldened moves, particularly with this kind of fairy tale advertisement about Trump Gaza and all of that. All that just simply laid the foundation for Israel to go back to what it did just a couple of weeks and what has been happening since the 7th of October. What you now have is a situation over the past that commenced on Tuesday, what is now known as the Ramadan massacre, where about close to 400. Now, I would say those numbers are in fact even prudent, because some figures go and estimate some sources up to 500-600. You can never really know what the figures are. So 400, just like the Hamas figures, which they will claim were exaggerated. The Hamas figures of 45,000 civilians, now close to 50. That in itself is an underestimate, but that's another discussion entirely. As we pointed out in the past, the Lancet estimates something like 200,000. So 400 is the bare minimum in terms of the number of people that were massacred in one particular. And what basically happened, for those who haven't been following the news, on Tuesday, that's the local time in Gaza, at about 2:15 in the morning, where a lot of people get up to, depending on the time, to prepare the suhoor. What subsequently happened is that out of nowhere, there were kind of these mass simultaneous attacks on approximately 100 separate locations, all simultaneously, designed to inflict the maximum number of casualties as families gathered and basically prayed for the getting ready for the morning Fajr. And what that resulted in, close to about 200 children. We're talking about, we're not just talking about children under 18. We're talking about children as in infants, as in kids under 10. And the one thing that is quite clear is that in going ahead with these particular vicious attacks, it's quite clear that Netanyahu proceeded and was emboldened by the kind of green light that he essentially got from Trump and Washington, over the past couple of days, and of course the weeks before that. And at the same time, simultaneously, the United States have been bombing Yemen. So that which resulted approximately about 31 martyrs that were killed in Yemen over the past couple of days. So you have
sorry, Yusuf, I don't want to cut you off because there's other brothers here, and I really want to give them time to also speak. And inshallah, we'll unpack Yemen. We're going to unpack Syria today, the aspects of that. I know the Muslim apologist mentioned something to me just earlier today regarding some of his countrymen being killed in Israel, in Gaza. The Muslim apologist, can you tell us more about that particular incident?
Yeah,
sorry, Yusuf, to cut you up there.
Sure.
yeah. So yes, so thank you, brother Yusuf, by the way. So just to go back to what I've read in the media. So there were some aid workers from Malaysia who were in Gaza distributing aid, and Israel, the terrorist state, massacred 6 of them. So this was in the news, and of course, the usual outrage in the media, and the Malaysian government saying that giving out the usual statements of condemnation, etc. But another thing, but I would like to point out something appalling about this, which is the non-Muslims here in Malaysia, especially in Facebook. When you post this news, you could do an emoji reaction to it, right? So the majority of people unfortunately who used the emoji, the laughing emoji, in response to this bit of news, I've noticed that, in fact, nearly all of them are non-Muslims. So I find it sad and strange that such a news involving 6 aid workers, Malaysian 6 aid workers, being killed, massacred by Israel, received a laughing emoji in response to the news. So to me, that is quite depressing and appalling that non-Muslims here in Malaysia would react in such a manner. I mean, even if let's say you do not like the Palestinian resistance movement, and I know that a lot of non-Muslims are actually against the politics in Israel, the parties concerned, but let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the humanitarian side of it. So 6 people were killed senselessly by Israel for no reason, because it was supposed to be a ceasefire moment, and Israel suddenly attacked without warning. There was no rockets firing from Gaza, or there was no reactive action from the resistance movements in Palestine. But then suddenly Israel came with their jets and flying vehicles, and they bombed and they destroyed and they killed, like what Brother Yusuf said, 400 people were killed, among them being 6 aid workers from Malaysia who were just NGO workers distributing aid to the Gazans. So this to me is very appalling, and that is why I'm here today to denounce the actions of this illegal state called Israel. I've never recognized the existence of Israel. I abhor the existence of Israel, and as my mentor, as whom I consider to be my spiritual mentor, Ismail Roji Al-Faruqi, mentioned in his work, Islam and the Problem of Israel, Zionism, or the state of Israel, must be dismantled by war, by force if necessary, in order to achieve peace in the Middle East. And I'm paraphrasing what he said.
You know what, brother, the Muslim apologist, it really breaks my heart, because we throw out these numbers of 400, and it's above 400. Half of that is 200 of them possibly are children. Yes. Of course, then you have women, and then you have normal men who are with their families, as Brother Yusuf mentioned, probably starting their fast in the morning with what little rations that they have. And next thing you know, they are being bombed by aeroplanes, which are probably supplied and fueled by America. And coming to America now, of course, we've got Brother Recon, who is from America. And backstage, I was actually just mentioning something to Brother Recon, and I'd love to get everybody's input on this. Feel free to jump in at any time. Is because I remember when Trump was going up for election, he wanted everybody's vote. Then he went to the Muslims, the imams, and he had them on stage, holding hands and saying that if you vote me in, I'll stop the wars, all these unnecessary wars. And these imams backed him. They said, yeah, we should vote for him. I want to know, where are these imams now? Where are you now? With that, I'm going to pass the mic on to Brother Recon, who is, like I said, who is from the other side of the pond, as we say here in the UK. Brother Recon, thank you for joining us, brother.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I mean, I was live all this Muslims trying to back Trump, and I was live and I said it a million times, and I keep saying it, that Muslims in the U.S. are blind, deaf, and stupid in the worst possible way, in just a completely different level of stupid. To think somehow that he was going to do anything or honor anything, it's almost like derangement syndrome. The love for the dunya and the West just overshadows everything. You know, I said, oh, he said some words, and I'm like, and then people are surprised. I'm like, I'm not. I think I'm like the only one that's surprised. I'm like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Like, what? I'm not surprised, but I know the history. I know the history of my people. I know everything the U.S. has done to my people since inception. You know, they said we were savages. People in the islands, we were savages. We were less than them. You know, and right now the island is being slowly turning to an apartheid state. That's what they want. That's always something they've always wanted. They want us to be indentured servants. We're second-class citizens, and it's just the mentality of the West. And for some reason, you know, the ummah, if you want to still call it an ummah, it's not. There's no ummah. There's some people who believe in the teachings of Islam. I'll grant them that. There is no ummah. People keep saying it. There is no ummah. If the Prophet were to come, you know, down here again on it, he would be like, "Wow, where's my ummah?" And they're like, "No, we're right here." And I'm like, "No, you're not. Where's seriously? Where's the ummah?" You guys not sure? You might be Muslims. You're definitely not in the ummah. You're not it. You're not it. Okay, there's no ummah. People need to stop saying it. There isn't any. Okay, it's obvious. Okay, they love for the dunya and the West, everything else is overpowers everything. Okay, I'm not surprised. People acting like it is surprised. I don't know how you could even enjoy Ramadan, enjoy the breaking fast when brothers and sisters don't have access to water or food. You know, you have all these videos of people just gorging themselves with this huge, oh, this is what I'm eating for Ramadan. I'm like, how are you even enjoying that? Like, how? Can anybody explain this to me?
Good point, Akhi. You make a beautiful point. I dislike when people have
they
take pictures. They take pictures of the food that they're going to eat.
Yeah.
And they put it on social media. And I'm thinking, why?
And the sisters are all, everything's a lifestyle. Sisters are out there with a lifestyle. Oh, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm dressing. I'm like, mothers are bearing pieces of their kids. And you're talking about your makeup routine in Ramadan, and it's like, is this a joke? Like, is this a joke? Like, is it? Like, I feel like it is a joke. I feel that it's all a complete joke. Okay, and it's appalling. It's just like this Ramadan, my imam has actually lowered being around quote Muslims. Okay. There's no respect for masjids. They don't do anything on it. It's you know, the only thing they talk about is some money or this and that on it. I'm like, people who are dying every day during my Ramadan. Like, what?
Absolutely. Like the ceasefire. Within that ceasefire, over 170 people died within that ceasefire.
But there was never a ceasefire. Even on the reports on it, they were still attacking during the entire ceasefire. They called it the drumming of I don't know what they call it on it, but there was never a ceasefire. People are like, oh, they broke. There was never once a ceasefire.
They call it mowing the lawn.
Just because they weren't carpet bombing. It's like, oh, they're not carpet bombing, so there's a ceasefire. And that's not what a ceasefire is. And it's just. It's like, well, we're all the Muslims, we're all these big influencers that were, you know, running for Trump. Where are they at? You know, they're on social media with the American flag and Muslim. Where are they at? Where are they all at right now? At least I would just be like, yeah, I was stupid. I was blind, deaf. Obviously, I need to pray. I need to seek Allah because I'm off the rails. No, none of them are saying any of that. They're pretending they weren't chilling for this. Of course, when I don't have a big following, so when I say things, it goes, people that, if I had a Lambo, I know I will get follow. It'll be comments, inshallah, alhamdulillah, every single Allah. It'll be on the comment section. All you have to do is have a Lambo, talk about Dubai, and every Muslim, alhamdulillah, inshallah, alhamdulillah, inshallah, alhamdulillah, mashallah. You talk about Gaza. Oh, here we go again. Oh, it's a genocide. People are dying. I'm trying to move to Dubai. They're bringing me down. I just want to know about a skiing routine, or I want to know how I want to know the 3 verses of the Quran. They're going to make me a millionaire. Why? I'm like, this is a joke.
It is a sad fact. It is a sad fact.
Joke. It is a complete joke.
I've been watching Dawa clips from other channels, and there's individuals asking for money. There's other brothers refuting the brother who's asking for money. And I'm like, you guys, may Allah have mercy upon us all. I'm sure there's bigger things to us to talk about and to raise than some of these issues that we're talking. This is probably not the time to talk about these issues. Brother Yusuf, I really want to move on to you, if you don't mind. It's like now the reports are coming. The figures are touching over 600 Palestinians have been killed. Over 1,000 have been injured. 200 possibly plus of them are children. Well, what is going on, Brother Yusuf?
I urge all you, and we've shared this magazine, they are phenomenal, and nobody can accuse us of bias. Have a look at Plus 972 magazine and Ynet, the idiot Arnold. The reason I go to the Israeli, the Israeli, you could call them left-wing press, not that I want to support or promote Israeli media, but more often than not, when you quote even Western-leaning journals like The Guardian or the Daily Mirror, for that matter, or some of the more left-leaning, you're always accused of bias. I want you to have a look at the report of what happened on Tuesday in Plus 972 magazine. It's an Israeli magazine. I forget the gentleman's name. He's a guy we discussed some months back, with regards to the AI. And one of the factors where the Israeli hospital works, and where in the past, at least I think the entire global media has shifted since the 7th of October, where they've succeeded in the past is that they've always humanized the victims. So even, for example, when they came up with the false Israeli propaganda, the Israeli hospital, of babies being put in ovens, of babies being beheaded, even though all of that was lies, they humanized the victims to the extent that people started actually believing that these incidents, and they imagined that this basically happened. Whereas a lot of reports, basically in terms of what's going on in Palestine, just simply puts out facts and figures. And more often than not, people think or sit back and say, yeah, it's tragic, or it's just unfortunate. It's awful. I mean, it's rubbish. It's none of any of that. And why I'm pointing out Plus 972 magazine is that out of all the reports I've seen over the past week since Tuesday, 972 magazine goes into the actual details of documenting eyewitness testimony of what basically is happening, and in fact the scale of destruction, and to the extent where the eyewitness, for example, basically document the dismembered bodies that they see on the street. The one thing which was quite disturbing is that the smell of blood, and people need to know this, particularly those Israeli apologists and fanatics out there who have over the past year attempted to attack us, sue us, shut down our channels. The smell of blood on Tuesday was so bad. The decaying flesh was so bad, and the heat, and of course there's lack of sanitation facilities because the sewage is basically out there, is that immediately you had a situation where the dead bodies, for some bizarre reason, they started forming maggots within a couple of hours. And then what happened was that these bodies and the blood that was, and these are family members, they were attracting stray dogs. So the dogs were basically coming, and the people couldn't go out because they were afraid that if they go out, as Israel has done in the past, they would blow them up. So what they were doing is that they were trying to throw stone. This is documented in the latest article in 972. I think Yuval Abraham, yeah, that's his name. Yuval Abraham documents this. An Israeli journalist, phenomenal journalist. He stated they started throwing stones at the dogs until the single ambulance arrived. When the ambulance arrived, the ambulance basically stated they've got no space to take anybody other than the wounded. So they refused to take the dead bodies that were there. And then when morning arrived, a lot of these eyewitnesses and neighbors realized that, look, his next door neighbor, there's more bodies thrown on the street, or his relative that he thought was safe because there was chaos. He was shocked to discover that his body part was there. There's a report, and I've just got the article here, and I'm giving you the quote, as it is that we found the upper half of a disfigured body, just the upper half, meaning the torso, lying 100 meters from the house that was targeted. And there were children that were there. There were children there. Children also watching these scenes. Now imagine that, you say you see these horrific movies and horror movies with age restrictions. Forget the massacres that are happening daily. Imagine the long-term traumatic effect of a child not seeing strangers, but seeing the torso of his own mother, of his own father, totally disfigured in real time. Or you have a situation where the bottom half of the torso is there, it's present, and the upper half is missing, and the face is basically blackened out, totally blackened out. There's no face left at all, completely destroyed. So what I'm pointing out is that when people out there, and certainly I'm not referring to any of you brothers, but when people out there talk about people being killed, it's like when you throw out figures, it becomes like a kind of a statistical gameplay. It's like statistical gaslighting, where people don't realize that this is not a tragedy. You see, this is not as you see some of the journalists stating, oh, this is a tragedy. This is awesome. Rubbish. This is not a tragedy. What a tragedy is if you have a flood and people die in a flood, a natural disaster, or there's a tsunami, or there's a drowning incident. None of this is a tragedy. None of this is a tragedy. This is plain down evil, mass murder, and genocide, and call it what it is. So even when people say it's awful, it's unfortunate, it's tragic, bullshit. Forgive the language, rubbish. Don't buy into that rubbish narrative. And this is the point. That's what Francesca Albanese, the phenomenal UN Special Rapporteur to the occupied Palestinian territories, in this interview she had, I think, yesterday on Channel 4 with one of your upper-class British Indians, I think Krishna Gurumurti, that's his name, Krishna Gurumurti. She pointed out the fact that how can you, after more than a year of genocide, go back to have the audacity, to have the lack of moral proclivity to now even question what happened on October 7th, whether it was a genocide or not. How can you talk about that? How can you even hypothecate about whether that was a genocide when what you see before your very eyes is indisputably, unmistakably a genocide? And just to add to the point which my brother Rick and Muslim made the point about, the aspect of the ceasefire, where there was no, it's quite clear there was no ceasefire. But what people need to know is that the ceasefire, in inverted commas, was more like a kind of what they call in law in general law of contract, when you've got someone by the proverbial testicles, they call it like a strangle contract. It's more kind of a strangle contract than a negotiated agreement between equal parties, because these are not, you cannot have a ceasefire. You can only have a ceasefire de facto between one major government, which has a powerful army, and another major government, which has a powerful army. And they then decide, look, they are now going to basically cease from hostilities for a particular time period. From a legal point of view, that was never the case here, because Israel de facto, as the party with far greater military and political power, always has the upper hand. So how can you talk about having a ceasefire when the occupying power is basically engaging in a strangle contract? The second point is this. Even before Israel cut off all the humanitarian aid, and as they've done right now. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, and the electricity in the Gaza over the past 2 weeks. The human rights organizations in Gaza, and many of these journalists from Al Jazeera, phenomenal journalists on the ground there in Gaza, made the point, and it's been documented, that at that stage, when the ceasefire was at its so-called heights, Israel was not even meeting the levels of humanitarian aid, shelter, or fuel that it provided in terms of the actual contract. So now to talk about the fact that, look, there is now a resumption of hostilities because of the fact that Hamas never fulfilled its terms, which is absolute rubbish, is actually a distraction from a very large issue itself. And the main point is that what seems to me, and I don't want to take up, I'm going to wrap this up so that the other brothers can contribute, is that the main point is this, is that in terms of the so-called conventional concern, Israel's aim at the outset was never about saving hostages. It's never about that, because the assumption being made and the charade being thrown up by super psychopaths and maniacs and scumbags like Trump and those cronies around him is that we want to get the hostages back. But that's never been the aim and objective of Israel, because right now with the bombings that have just happened over the past few days here, people are now saying that in all likelihood, a lot of these hostages that are being kept, the Israeli hostages, were probably being basically killed. So what you now have is a situation where Israel, on its own term, by virtue of breaking or going back to the games as usual, is invoking the Hannibal Directive, in terms of which they're going to bomb all and sundry. And whether they kill their hostages, it's really neither here nor there. It's got nothing to do with the hostages, because if it was going to do with the hostages, those hostages that were returned, like for example the baby, I forget the name, Birbas, a couple of weeks back. Many outlets like the Electronic Intifada, like journalists on the ground, stated that those hostages were not killed by Hamas, they were killed by Israel. In fact, there hasn't been a single documented case of any hostage that was taken by Hamas that was actually killed or raped in captivity. Not one. Look at those female soldiers that were released by Hamas. I mean, they criticized Hamas for making a particular show. They were in fine health. They were getting meals. Even though there's starvation there amongst a vast population, you can criticize Hamas for that, but they were well fed. Most of the hostages released and that are alive, none of them have documented any kind of torture. None of them have documented rape. None of them have stated that Hamas has killed anybody. Rather, the issue is that Israel has been killing its own hostages, just like it did on October 7th, and is doing now under the present carpet bombing. So the point that people need to know is that there is no ceasefire. This was like a strangle contract between two unequal parties. You've got one belligerent outlet, which is a terrorist regime, and then you've got a non-state actor, Hamas, which is not a government, and Gaza is not a government at all. The West Bank is not a country, and the West Bank is not a country. And, what has unfortunately happened is that when you've got a maniac in the White House, this guy is so insane.
Brother Yusuf, I touched on the aspect. Yeah. He had this idea that he wanted the votes, and he aimed for the Muslims, and the Muslims fell into the trap. I don't know if you saw it in your side of the world, where they had him on stage, the Imams of America. We are going to back Trump. Yeah. He's going to end the war in Gaza and rebuild Gaza. And within 2 months, it's flipped on its head totally.
But what I find shocking is that the naivety. I mean, I can understand in a world where social media doesn't exist, where newspapers don't exist, where you're seeing a person who's ascending to the presidency for the first time, and he's a dark horse, and you don't know his background. But I mean, Trump, for heaven's sake, people have known about Trump. I mean, I knew about Donald Trump when I was in school. I mean, the guy is a psychopathic. He was a psychopathic businessman. He's a narcissist. I mean, I don't know if it's deliberate. It cannot be ignorance. It certainly cannot be ignorance on the part of the Muslim imams about Trump, and certainly no ignorance on the part of the Muslim leadership in the Middle East about Trump or what he stands for. A lot of these particular leaders, I think more often than not, it's a question of political expediency. I mean, we had the same thing in South Africa, where a lot of the ulama, the Molvis and the mullahs, particularly from the Deobandi fraternity, sided with the apartheid regime during the heights of apartheid. I mean, I was not around then, but the point is that it was mavericks and people who were disowned by the communities, like Ahmed Didat or Imam Ahmed Qasim or Imam Abdullah Haroon, who was slaughtered by the apartheid regime. These were the voices that were an aberration, but the vast majority went with the establishment. And so it appears to me that I'm not surprised at all.
Is it the slave mentality? I'm sorry to bring this up. It is a very hot topic. Is it the colonial kind of like mentality that we're inferior to the whites, and they, colonizers, they gave us education, so we should really kind of like bow down and go with this ideology, even though they look at us. I remember the days, and this is quite offensive, that they used to call people like me coconuts, or other people coconuts, that you're dark from the outside but white from the inside, and all this kind of ideology. So do you think that was also part of the thought process there in South Africa?
Look, in the South African context, there were many factors, but a lot of these individuals also had deep pockets. So there's a number of factors that basically play into it. But I think it's also a question of, I wouldn't say in the United States context, I mean, there's clearly no ignorance. So I can't.
I actually push back on that, Yusuf. I actually think there is ignorance. I think when I visited America myself, you speak to Americans, and no offense to your brother Recon there, that when you ask them about places around the world, like capital cities and stuff, they have no idea of leaders or countries. You ask them where is Ukraine, they would not be able to tell you where Ukraine is. If you ask them where is Palestine, they would probably say maybe another universe, another planet or something. They do not know that these places exist. Only thanks to media and social media that these things have been brought to a lot of Americans and other people attention. But pushing back on something that you said there, brother Yusuf, when the ceasefire was arranged, you are saying that basically Hamas kept the deal. They continued with the agreement, but Israel are the ones that broke the ceasefire, put more restrictions on the Palestinians, such as blocking electricity, blocking water, and even the UK government, which really shocked me. Even they came out just the other week here in the UK and said this is against international law.
That was Lammy, and Keir Starmer tried to play down what David Lammy stated in relation to the fact that, and Lammy is a snake himself. I mean, because he was quite clearly promoting the. You remember he was the first one on BBC that started mentioning and promoting the lie of beheaded babies and mass rapes. But what he appeared to say was that Israel may appear, and look at the words that they couched it, may appear to have breached international humanitarian law, which was kind of played down by Keir Starmer in terms of what Lammy stated. But there's no may have. It has over the past year, more than a year. We went through all the reports. We went through Amnesty International's report. We went through Human Rights Watch's report. We went through the Special Rapporteur's report in October last year. 2 days ago, we went through the latest UN report in detail. I think it was about 49 or 50 pages. And all those reports, these are non-Muslim that are individuals involved in the research. So they've got no particular bias, non-Palestinians. And all of them make the point that Israel has committed 1, ethnic cleansing, 2, genocide, 3, crimes against humanity, 4, war crimes. In the latest report, you've got the allegations of sexual violations being committed against the Palestinians. And that's documented. But beyond that, the B'Tselem report that we discussed so many times, the B'Tselem report, the Israeli human rights organization, in its Welcome to Hell discussion, which is about more than 200 pages, give us case study after case study of Palestinian women being raped by Israeli soldiers, men being sodomized and having their genitals electrocuted and tortured in the most horrendous, shocking ways possible. So when I was speaking about the fact of they're not ignorant, I was referring to particularly, I think the imam that you are referencing is the one called Husseini, who was interviewed by even Mahdi Hassan. I was looking up right now. And he basically came out and supported Trump. Now, I'm saying the guy must be living in a tomb or in a cave somewhere in the distant Rocky Mountains, not to be aware of what's going on around the world. So I'm saying is that he can't be supporting Trump by virtue of being ignorant, or by virtue of not knowing that there's a genocide going on, or by virtue of not knowing that Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, before Trump came into power in the latest administration, made the point that Palestinians need to be ethnically cleansed and removed from Gaza, and Gaza needs to be turned into some sort of Riviera and hospitality zone. So I'm saying, what I'm saying is that I understand the ignorance is there with respect, apologies to our brother Rick and Muslim, that Americans, a lot of them happen to be an ignorant lot. But a lot of these leaders, and I'm talking now specifically, which angers me, Muslim leaders that have come out in support of Trump or in support of past administrations, cannot have done that by virtue of their being ignorant of the situation of the American administration. I mean, they clearly lived in the lifetime of the Iraq War and the wars in Afghanistan and what happened after 9/11, and of course Gulf War I, and the drone attacks by even someone who pretended to be as placid as Obama for that particular man. So they've lived through that, and they can't clearly state that they are not aware of it. So when people take positions, I always say, what's the motivation there? I don't know what the motivation is. Do they want to perhaps become so-called, be viewed by the establishment as official representatives of the Muslim community? That's a possibility as well. And it happens that they are now the official spokespeople for the Muslim community. I mean, they get access to the White House. They become what's the term used when you are the official, the chaplain, so-called Muslim chaplain. I don't know what the motivations are behind it. One thing that it cannot be for the life of me is that if you tell me that, look, these people who are leaders in the Muslim community and otherwise are doing it out of ignorance. I don't think they're ignorant. I think they clearly are aware, and they take their positions for whatever purposes they want to. And when questioned and when prodded, like you see the interview that Mahdi Hassan did with him on Sateo, I haven't seen the whole thing, but just check it up. They make apologies, and they take an apologetic stance in regard to their position. So this obviously means that they know the bigger game and the bigger agenda. Otherwise, they wouldn't speak in such moderate tones when it's quite clear in terms of what is transpiring. And I mean, I think with leadership as well.
We'll come back to this. I really want to ask the Muslim apologist if he's there. Muslim apologist, next question. It's a concern because every time I see a talk show regarding the Palestine situation, the genocide that's taking place, they always, the interviewer always asks the individual, do you condemn Hamas? Since 2023, 7th of October, why do people, especially from the West, and it is lack of knowledge, Yusuf, I really think it is, why do they think the war only started in 2023 in October the 7th? Why do you think that is? Muslim apologist, that was for you. Brother Recon, feel free to...
That's for me. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so you're asking about the reason, just to clarify, you're asking for the reason why the war happened in the first place?
No, why do you think people from around the globe, especially from the West, only think the war started in 2023? All of a sudden, these butchers, these barbaric, this medieval Arabs came out of the desert and started slaughtering innocent Israelis. To my knowledge, the war never started there. It started many, many years before that. I'd love to hear your take on that, brother.
Yeah, I think based on my observations and based on what I observe, what I see and understand about, the peoples of the U.S., basically the Anglophile nations and Europe, and those who clearly support this illegal state of Israel, the Zionist state of Israel. I would say one of the reasons would be, well, first of all, ignorance of the history of the Palestinians, because they tend to repeat the same myth that Palestinians do not exist as a nation, that the Palestinians are not a people, that the Palestinians are Arab tribes who came to the region from Arabia, that the Palestinians do not have a culture or do not have a personality, a status of their own. So that is in part due to the Israeli propaganda of of saying that that Israel, when they first came to the land called Palestine, it is meant for a people without a land. It's a land without people for a people without a land. So this is the usual mantra that Zionists will often tell you, and this is I think a main reason, one of the key reasons why, uh, unfortunately, those who support Israel do not seem to recognize the aspirations of the Palestinians, who most likely, most definitely were and are descendants of those people who were already in the region before the Islamic armies came. When Umar al-Khattab came with his armies to the region, to the Levant, there were already peoples there. So those peoples converted to Islam and they were Arabized. So these people that we see now, the Palestinians that we see today, those in Jordan, those in Syria, those in the Levant, are the descendants of these people. So most likely their ancestors were either Jews or Christians, okay, before the Islamic armies came. So to say that these people, the people of Palestine, people of Jordan, they were people who came from the Gulf regions, or they came from Arabia, is a travesty of history, an ignorance of history. So that's one reason. Another reason, I think, is because also in America, especially due to the influence of the Jewish lobby. So we have the I think it's the ADL, right, Anti-Defamation League, where they lobbied the Jewish influence on the Congress is pretty much very high, unfortunately. And I think there are Muslim groups, there are Arab groups in the US, like for example the Arab American Defamation League, uh, who are also trying to lobby in Congress uh, for the fate of the Palestinians. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be working because the ADL seems to be more influential in that sense. So that is also another reason. I think the voice of Palestinians in the US is unfortunately being curbed by the Jewish lobby. And you see this in recent days. There were some activists in universities. There was a student activist especially, I think he was from Colombia, I think, who
Yeah.
was arrested by Trump. And he's going to be deported soon. And there's another lecturer from, I think, George Mason University, who has been arrested about a few days ago, and he's going to be deported as well. You see, the only reason for this is because they support the Palestinian cause. So, unfortunately, I think, with all due respect to Brother Rican, unfortunately, I think the United States is leading towards becoming a fascist state. Unfortunately, I say this with a heavy heart as well, because I'm American born too. You see, I was born in the States. So I say this I do have some affinity for the US, even though I wasn't raised in the US, but I was born in the US. So, so I do, feel the pain of the Muslims in America.
Absolutely.
To a certain
Yeah.
extent. Yeah.
I don't want to use Brother Recon as a punch bag on it. Sorry, Brother Recon. But
No, I
have to
my
apologize to
affinity
Brother
was
Rican,
my
but because it might
island,
be,
and the entire history of my island it's all about how the U.S. has destroyed, stolen all our land, has made us indentured servants in our own land. It's making us into an apartheid state. It continues to do that. We are second-class citizens. They called us. They forced sterilization in half of our women. Not to mention what South America on it. They said we're savages on it. We pay taxes with no vote on there. I mean, it's that's the history of my island and the U.S. even when we were under Spain, who they're so bad on it, we were actually live better. Like it's, and then but everybody just because they give us some type of comfort. Then that's what everyone in the West is on it. They have no problem. Look, as long as people can sit down and watch TV, they are okay with mass killings of babies. Every Christian is like that. They say they don't, but they really are. They know where their phones come from. They come from slaves in China. In the factory, where people were committing suicide because they were so tired. Do you think actual Americans care? Of course they don't. At all, they don't. They have no empathy for anything. They want to sit around. And that's including the Muslims. Say whatever they want on it, as long as they get to quote, be comfortable. They're not going to put up much of a fight. And it's funny because now I see the youth on it. They're the ones that are standing up because their parents wouldn't do it because they have 46,000 excuses of why they won't speak up. Literally every single minute, every single day, they'll come up with a brand new. They'll spend more time finding excuses of why they won't speak up on it than anything else, right? Because they want comfort. They don't want any hardship. I mean, and God forbid they have to fight for anything. They don't. They don't want that. They don't want that. And you have a hadith in the Quran talking about this.
Is it me? It's frozen.
Like whoa! This whole dying for the sake of Allah thing. Whoa, martyr. Whoa, hold on. You're being an extremist. You're being an extremist if you use those words now. Yeah, I know that talks a little bit about that in the Quran, but that's for extremists. That's for the extremists. And for everything you want to talk about Iran and or the Shia and everything else, at least they're consistent. They're consistent. Muslims are not consistent. They are. And they're like, oh, they're not true Muslims. Well, they have no problem dying for this. Even if they're misguided, they have no problem dying for the sake of Allah. None of them do. They're okay with it. They're like, okay, well, cool. Become martyrs. They have no problem with it. 99.9% of all Muslims like, no, absolutely not dying for the what? No, I'm not going to. You know, they don't. There's no fear about Allah. I don't care what's going to happen. They think they're going to talk their way out of it in the day of judgment if they even believe in it. I truly believe they think they can talk their way out of it. Be like, okay, hold on. Let's not get a little antsy, God. Hold on. Let me explain my situation. I think that's actually how it's going to happen. Like, okay, well, I was busy, but I have a mortgage, and I can't lose that job because with my car, and I was I'm trying to move to Dubai, but so I had to that struggle. I'm like, but my makeup routine, got me these views, and it's like, okay, but I had to have my latte, and it's hard for me too. And come on, that's what the Ummah in the West is. That's what it is. The people who fly the HDTV flags, they are doing more for the cause of Palestine than Muslims in the West are.
What shocks me, brother Rico, what shocks me, imagine if a US aid worker was killed in, for example, Syria or a UN worker was killed or a Malaysian aid worker was killed in
Ukraine.
Iraq or Ukraine. It'll be uproar. It'll be on front page TV. It'll be splattered all over. You never stop hearing about it. You get to know his name. You get to know a picture about him, that he was a loving husband. He had 3 children. These were his children's names. He had a wife. He had a pet dog and so forth. For the West, when even today, just 10 minutes ago, there's been a UN aid worker that was killed. Their army base was bombed by tanks, and one of the aid workers from the United Nations was killed. And even today, the Israeli army are doing their internal investigation, saying that it wasn't us. But we know, with Brother Yusuf, we went through the aspects of Hind Rajab, Muhammad Mahar, many people who were killed, murdered, and it seems to be children. Why do the IDF aim for children? And I really want to throw this out there. And anybody in the chat, I really want to get your feedback on this. Why do we see so many? Well, I know for a fact, one knife crime here, if a young teenager dies of a knife crime here in the UK, it is splattered all over the news, how bad the UK is, how bad London is. But we're seeing women and children, body parts of children. There's one image Yusuf showed me where it was a clear bag. You couldn't tell these are parts of people because it was just like a bag of flesh and bones. You couldn't tell. So, Brother Yusuf, why are these bastards, these evil, sadistic bastards, killing children? Hey, are they seeking pleasure in that? Why? What's this sick mentality? And I'm sorry if I'm losing my mind right now, but it just breaks my heart. If you've got a young daughter, if you've got a young son, and you understand when you see these images of a father saying farewell to his son, his daughter, his beloved one who's just been massacred, you probably can't even identify them because they are being torn to pieces. Brother Yusuf, why are these bastards, evil, sadistic bastards, killing children?
I think it's the strong words, and I appreciate your point of view. But this is essentially what Zionism has basically done from inception. I mean, from 1948, even before 1948, in the Deir Yassin massacre, the vast majority of victims were children and women that were raped. So that's part and parcel of the Zionist ideology, to target others who they've clearly dehumanized. In the context of what's happened since the 7th of October, when the genocide commenced, all the Israeli politicians, or at least a vast majority of Israeli politicians, have explicitly framed the children of Gaza as not innocent. In fact, I think the president, or, we saw all those statements, but basically, we had one politician that essentially stated that the children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves. The children of Gaza has brought this upon themselves. And it was mentioned in the Knesset session, but it wasn't even mentioned by someone who was an extreme right-winger, or someone like Smotrich or Itamar Ben-Gvir, who've clearly stated some extreme rhetoric. But this came from the opposition party, I think it's called the Yair Lapid's opposition party. It came from an individual within the opposition party who stated that, look, the children of Gaza are bringing this upon themselves. So essentially what it means is that, they don't view this, as people who are human. This is a total dehumanization of the Palestinian people in the entirety. And more recently, you had a situation, I can't recall, I don't have the quote on me, that it stated that, look, these mothers, I think it was in Ben-Gvir or even someone worse than him, that the mothers in Gaza will give birth to children, and if they're not killed, these children will end up becoming the terrorists who will come after us. That's a kind of warped, bizarre, sadistic, and satanic logic.
I just put up a picture of this young child who was killed today. Subhanallah. He's 1 year old. Him and his mother were murdered today by the IDF, and there's an image of his father, giving him.
I think, if I can interject here, I think what happened in the Holocaust was more than just that event. It taught the Zionists what people, not just able to, will allow. It was a teaching moment, because it gave them all the tools they needed to know how to to do the same thing, and how to make their own people follow it, how to make the world follow it, how to make other people wrestle their cause. Like, it was a teaching lesson. That we know that the Zionists were okay with how they wanted the Jews to leave Germany. Like, they were okay with that part with the Nazis too on there. Obviously, they didn't want the death, but they wanted that segregation, and it taught them valuable lessons that we see now. So see Holocaust survivors going, this is the same playbook. Yes, because they were given a playbook on how people will turn a blind eye to a mass genocide. And that's why people find so many parallels. This is nothing new, because it was something that was already done before, and the only thing they did was they just refined it. They just refined it.
I totally agree. I think they had a blueprint, and they've had this blueprint since the Americas, when the Red Indians and other indigenous people will have been taken over and colonized. They had a blueprint, and they know how to divide and conquer us. And unfortunately, us suckers, us Muslims, we're so dumb. We don't see it. We go for the dunya. We don't fear death. We fear death, and we just want to live, and we want dunya. And this is what's happening. Brother Yusuf, I brought up this picture of this 1-year-old child. Subhanallah.
I want to address that 1-year-old, because and maybe this argument can be used to shut down the hasbara out there when the aspect of child mortality or the children being killed in Gaza. You see what the argument is, generally speaking, is that when this is presented to the Trump administration or Western supported, Israeli supported Western media, the argument that they sometimes present, as you see all the time in some of your right-wing channels, is that they make the case that the high child death rate is partly down to demographics. Now, that's a weak apologetic on the part of these Israeli perverted apologists for and on behalf of Israel, by making the point that, look, they can't help it because 47% of Gaza's population are under 18 years. So if people die, the children are in a large number, and it's just unfortunate that they die. That's the kind of bullshit that you get. The problem with the argument is that they make the point that the child mortality rates in Gaza are a reflection of the natural factors. But that's not true. That's not true at all. Because the people need to know is that they are a direct consequence of Israel's military aggression in Gaza, not just by having some sort of careless disregard and an indiscriminate form of bombing. We've basically shown numerous times on this platform, on your show last year, at the beginning of last year, and even in June, how Israel has systematically used these powerful explosives in these densely populated areas, but more specifically through selective targeting, through AI tracking, such as, the gospel and Where's Daddy. So this basically shows that individuals are deliberately being targeted in their particular homes. Now, given the deep evidence about the fact of childhood death, health, the outcome of using starvation as a method of war, actively denying aid, you're destroying infrastructure that essentially enables life, and that children will die inevitably. And you know full well that this will happen, over and above the fact that you are using AI technology in relation to that, basically means that the Palestinian children are being killed by design. Because even those mainstream media outlets that are now, like the BBC, for example, and I would still like to see this documentary that has been canned or shut down, but even the BBC, they acknowledge that, look, what Israel is doing is somewhat disproportionate, but they don't make the point which we are making, is that Palestinian children are being killed by design. You see, it's one thing where you say that, look, you are targeting a group of terrorists, but you're indiscriminate and you are reckless in terms of who dies in the process, which in itself is a war crime because international law doesn't allow that. But this is not what is happening there. We are saying this is a deliberate attempt to kill people. So, for example, when Itamar Ben-Gvir, that's a guy I was talking about earlier on, when he was, and apparently he's been just reappointed to the Netanyahu government. He's now the police minister, as far as I know, subject to correction. He's a police minister. He was questioned. Imagine that, the minister of police in Israel. He was questioned, what do you say about the so-called open fire policy of the army in terms of its directive? And he makes the argument, to quote him, is that we cannot have women and children getting close to the border. Anyone who gets near, whether it's a woman or a child, must get a bullet in the head. This is the police minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Then the deputy speaker, this is the guy I was looking for, I just checked it now, Nassim Vaturi. He's a deputy speaker of the Knesset, like you've got in London, like we've got in South Africa. We've got the speaker, we've got the deputy speaker of parliament. He's a deputy speaker of the Knesset, Nassim Vaturi. Type his name on Google. Nassim Vaturi is Palestinian children. Nassim Vaturi, Palestinian children. He states that every child born in Gaza is already a terrorist from the moment of his birth. I don't know if I can play this. I don't think you're going to get a strike, Brother Mohammed, but I want to play this clip. Can we play this clip with your permission? Middle East Eye has never shut us down. I just want to, I know I don't want to take. I'm not showing Al Jazeera, but this is Middle East Eye.
Yeah, if I get another strike, then of course, my channel will be going down. So you'll be watching me on Rumble.
Then I owe you a lot. But we played Middle East.
Before you do play that clip, here's the figures of the killings. As you can see here, 436 people at least killed. 183 are children. 94 people are women. 34 elderly, and 125 men. So you can see that 183 are children being killed. Why? Sadistic bastards.
God, it's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible.
Sadistic bastards. Sorry,
it's totally horrible.
Yeah. So this is the channel. The Israeli politician says any child born in Gaza is already a terrorist. It's just going to be a few seconds we'll try and show.
אף אחד לא נגד החזרת החטופים, קודם כל בואו נבהיר את זה, כן? אנחנו בעד החזרת כולם, קודם כל המלחמה עם חמאס לא תיגמר, לא בשנה, לא בשנה, ראינו את הנבלות האלה, שמלווים את החטופים, לא מסוגלים לאבטח אותם אפילו, אלה צריכים להיות מחוסלים, ביום שאחרי השבת כל החטופים הביתה, צריכים להמשיך את המלחמה, והיא תימשך, אין לי ספק שהיא תימשך. כי אי אפשר לחיות עם היצורים האלה לידינו.
שומעת פה מנגינה אחרת, כלומר, אתה אומר אפשר ללכת לשלב השני, להחזיר את כל החטופים, ורק אחר כך לחדש את המלחמה, לא לפני השבת כל החטופים. כן, לא, תראי, זו מנגינה שאני מנגן אותה הרבה בתקופה האחרונה, כן, תמיד שדובר על השבת חטופים ולקראת העסקה, ואני אמרתי, להחזיר את החטופים הביתה. אנחנו צריכים להיות הגיוניים, לא תמיד לדבר פוליטיקה. מה זאת אומרת? ברגע שיש אנשים שאומרים, לא, נגד העסקה. מה נגד העסקה? המלחמה תימשך 5-10 שנים עכשיו. אנחנו לא, הרי זה לא ייגמר פה, אין פה שלום עם אף אחד. מי נעשה שלום? עם חמאס? אפשר לעשות אותם הסכמים? אפשר גם לעבוד עליהם קצת, כן? אנחנו יהודים, רוצים להיות ישרים, עושים הסכמים. מה זה, שוויץ? לא. זה אזור, רצועת עזה, שתולה במחבלים. כל ילד שנולד עכשיו בדקה הזאת...
Every child born now, that's a clip here. Every child born now, in this minute, this is what he says.
ילד שנולד עכשיו בדקה הזאת, הוא מחבל מראש.
He's already a terrorist when he's born. Every child is already a terrorist when he's born. So this is total dehumanization in relation to the Palestinians, basically. In relation to the Palestinians, total dehumanization. And so there is an attempt by deliberate design to target, to destroy, to eliminate the Palestinian children. There's no qualms, there's no shame in relation to anything what they're doing. And I just want to make the one point, you asked the question before I move on about, some of these leaders not being able to respond or being asked to condemn Hamas. Let me just basically put out the legal definition. In international law, the right to resist is closely related to the rights to the principle of self-determination. And the right to self-determination arises in situations of colonial domination, foreign occupation, and racist regimes that deny a segment of the population political participation. That is already acknowledged by international law as having occurred in the occupied West Bank, in the occupied Gaza Strip, and in East Jerusalem. So there's no qualms about it being occupied territory. So according to international law then, the state, which in this case would be the Israeli state, has no right to use force against lawful exercise of self-determination, whilst those who are seeking self-determination can use military force if there is no other way to achieve their goals. So the question is, did Hamas have any other way to achieve their goals? The answer is no. They tried. The Palestinian resistance tried in general during the Great March of Return in 2019, this Gandhi-like protest on the borders, symbolically stating they want to come back to the homeland. What happened to them? They were gunned down. They tried before the formation of Hamas. They tried over the past, even through the democratic box in 2006 when Hamas came to power. So all of this was tried, and the United Nations, in fact, the Charter of the United Nations states that there's an inherent right of national self-defense in the face of aggression. In this case, in the face of Israeli aggression. So based on the Charter and based on previous military instruments, all scholars have argued, legal scholars for that particular matter, that the right to resist exists in customary international law where self-determination is an issue. Is self-determination an issue in the occupied Palestinian territories? Most definitely. Now, can war crimes be committed where the right to resist is basically fomented, or where people are engaging in the right to resist? Of course, but I mean, war crimes existed were committed by the ANC government. The ANC government, for example, in South Africa, they had a policy where fellow blacks who they viewed or deemed as askaris or as traitors, even though there was no empirical evidence or proof, they would, for example, have a system in the townships, the black townships, where they would take a tire, they would pour oil, and they would then light the tire, and so the person would burn to death. This was done in broad daylight before other children. This was done by the armed military wing of the ANC government called Umkhonto weSizwe, and by other groups like APLA, which was part of the Pan-Africanist organization, the armed military wing of the Pan-Africanist Association, the Pan-Africanist Congress of AZAPO, and the Azanian People's Organization. Now, all of this could amount to war crimes, but did that in any way detract from the fact that the right to resist and the right to stand up against apartheid was illegitimate? Absolutely not. So in the right to, in invoking the right to resist by virtue of the principle of self-determination, it is possible that you can be committing war crimes or what could be viewed as crimes against humanity, but that does not in any way detract from the legitimate right to resistance. And in such a situation, the occupying power has absolutely no right under international law to raise the principle of self-defense. So, as I've mentioned on this stream and on many other streams, when Hamas entered that area where the Nova Music Festival was, and the various kibbutzes in the southern region of Israel, all that area was not a different country. It wasn't a situation of Brits or the British coming and invading Israel. These are people who are part and parcel of that particular land. Their ancestors, their forefathers, their grandfathers resided in that area where the kibbutzes are set up, and they were kicked out and dumped into this refugee camp. So by them entering that area, it was not a question of one sovereign territory breaking and entering into another sovereign territory. Nothing along that particular line. It was simply a situation of the Hamas members, or some of them, and they were just not Hamas factions, there were others, and of course there were criminal elements as well, which therefore explain some of the war crimes that may have been committed. But they entered into an area which in fact belonged to them, and they are part of that particular area, because that area which they entered is controlled by a regime which is occupying them. And so long as you're an occupied entity, and so long as you are under illegal occupation, you always have the right to resist. And so when you resist, the party then attacks you cannot invoke the principle of self-defense. So when you've got a scumbag swine like Piers Morgan, who is an excuse of a journalist, talks about, I support Israel having the right to self-defense, but I'm not questioning about the proportionality in his upper-class English accent. That's total rubbish, because the aspect of proportionality cannot arise in the first place when you cannot invoke the principle of self-defense. But this is where the argument also fails, even by many of our Muslim speakers out there. A lot of these Muslim dais and a lot of these big mouths generally on the channel, they've gone on the show and they fall into the trap of, the question basically about condemning Hamas, or do you condemn Hamas, which is being even asked now, more than a year and a half later. But that question can easily be debunked by virtue of the fact that in terms of international law, even the United Nations General Assembly resolutions have explicitly endorsed the right to resist, the subjecting of people to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation. And this is not a case there. In Israel, we don't have a foreign power. We've got a settler colonial entity that is basically oppressing another people in a refugee camp. And those people in a refugee camp come from the very area where the settler colonial state has set up shop. So that area in the southern region of the Nova Festival, I mean, they had names. They had names in the past, like Najd, for example, that area in the southern area, and other such areas. They were just entering a land where they were kicked out. So this is the whole point I want to make, Brother Muhammad, is that occupied people always have the right to self-determination, always. And Hamas has a full right to self-determination and the right to resist. So I don't make a case for Hamas. I'm not going to...
Of course. What I see always with the narrative here is that if you resist tyranny, or if you resist against government ideologies, you are labeled straight away as a troublemaker, a terrorist organization. If you mention this terrorist organization like Hamas or the Houthis, all of a sudden you are going to be arrested, detained, passport will be taken off you straight away. So much restriction will be put on you, deportation. And now moving on to Yemen. From the media and from X, you see so many images of the people of Yemen helping the people of Palestine. And now recently Donald Trump has launched a massive air campaign against the people of Yemen. And Yemen was already a very poor country. They went through famine, through another country, a neighboring country, an Arab country, and they still seem to put it off, like sinking one of the battleships in the ocean. American cargo ship was also hit. So I'd love to touch on the aspect of Yemen and the Houthis. And also, if there's anybody in the chat wants to come on and defend the IDF, feel free to come on, and you will be given ample time and be able to share your thoughts with the panelists. So if there's anybody in the chat, hit the link and we'll get you on straight away. Muslim apologist, I think you want to share something, right? Yeah, there we are.
Yeah. So the news, and then unfortunately, brothers, just want to inform you that I might need to leave in about 15 minutes time for Suhoor. But I'll stick around for the meantime. So this is basically the news where you can see the I don't know what to say about this. I mean, it sounds genocidal to me. Trump says Houthis in Yemen will be annihilated as US keeps up strikes. This sounds very genocidal to me. And then the news goes on saying that President Trump says that, the Houthis will be completely annihilated by the US military strikes. And then all this genocidal language. Tremendous damage has been inflicted. Watch how it will get progressively worse. It's not even a fair fight and never will be. They will be completely annihilated. Wow, that's very disturbing, I think, right?
Well, we know it's very disturbing because that's what he wants to do. The blueprint is already there. He wants to annihilate the people of Palestine and then move on to Yemen. Like I said, they are desperately trying to get rid of the people of Palestine and the people of Gaza. But subhanallah, I've never seen anybody in my entire life fight back like the way the people of Palestine have. It has been amazing. I actually thought, and I said this from day one with Brother Yusuf, that I cannot see the Israeli force win in Palestine and in Gaza. I can never see it because the will of the people are too strong. And sooner or later, the coin will flip, and I think America will collapse from within. I think Israel will collapse from within, and other European countries who kind of towed along will maybe start to push away from Israel and America. I can probably see that happening, because some of the European countries, I know we are being silenced, but so many European countries have been protesting, highlighting the death toll in Palestine. And the people who are protesting are not Muslims. They are non-Muslims. They are Jews. They are Orthodox Jews, also raising awareness that what the Israeli army are doing is a genocide. And we've had Rabbi on before from New York. I remember Brother Yusuf. Do you recall that, Brother Yusuf?
Yeah, it was. We had two rabbis, basically. It was Rabbi Weiss, who's the head of the Neturei Karta. We had Rabbi David Feldman as well. Let's get them back and get some of the others back again in the forthcoming days and weeks, particularly after Ramadan. And they were quite clear. These are ultra-Orthodox Jews. They're not liberal Jews like, Finkelstein and some of the others like Noam Chomsky, and who's now, he cannot speak any longer. But these were ultra-Orthodox Jewish rabbis who clearly knew the Torah. And they basically, in fact, even call for the destruction. They describe Israel as a satanic state. They make no qualms about it. I mean, and from a moral religious point of view, they state it's totally anti-biblical, anti-godly. So for that purpose, they are doing quite a remarkable job speaking out against the state of Israel. And you've got a lot of the Jewish Voices for Peace, the Code Pink in the United States. You've got this frail old lady. I don't know if you've seen the videos of this frail old lady on Code Pink. She goes up and she challenges the U.S. Politicians in Congress about their support for the state of Israel and receiving funds from what you call this, from the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee. She's done a remarkable. In fact, let me just show you. This is a 1-minute clip where I think she questions leaders, senators, in terms of what happened. Is questions AIPAC lobbyists having lunch with pictures of Gaza.
I just want to touch on this comment, and it just kind of like baffles me that this sister Shaz replied back to Matthew that, I guess Jesus died for your sins, but he was unwilling to die. He was unwilling to die and to be tortured and to be whipped. There is a big difference. The people of Palestine are willing to put their soul, their blood, their lives to defend what they believe in. But according to Jesus and the Gospels, I don't think Jesus was too happy that he was going to be crucified and tortured and killed.
Of course not.
He wasn't too happy.
Share this link, Brother Mohammed. This before we leave. There's a link that I've got here. Is it? Can you play it on your? No, it's the one with the YouTube. I've just shared something.
Which website? I've got to be careful.
YouTube channel, the YouTube channel Code Pink.
Okay.
That one there. So I'm just going to play this, but listen to this lady. She's a elderly lady, but she's remarkable, questioning the particular leaders and politicians in terms of what they're doing. Here we are.
Well, you're having your lunch.
Listen.
Really work time for your children. Well, it is important to think about. I know it's uncomfortable to think about, but it should.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
Maybe you should go there.
I've been there 7 times.
Yeah.
While you're having your lunch, just think about the children in Gaza who are starving.
He's very brave.
So she's known for basically, approaching what they call ambush journalism, approaching politicians, approaching congressmen, approaching lobbyists, approaching Trump, and questioning. So there's a lot of people out there doing, just to come back to the point, doing remarkable work. A lot of them are non-Muslim, and they're bold. they're bold and they stand up and they speak out. And that's why I'm saying our leadership needs to be bold. Our Muslim leaders need to be bold. Our Muslim imams need to be bold and not so squeamish. And I mean, this is not the legacy of the Prophet to engage in quiet diplomacy. That's not the legacy. You need to be bold and speak up to the Fir'auns of our time. That's what you need to do. And a lot of non-Muslims are doing it. And we need to support these individuals. In the United Kingdom, you've got people like Owen Jones, a remarkable journalist he's got his YouTube channel. Asa Winstanley from the Electronic Intifada, his house was raided. Then you had the other journalist, I forget his name, was it Black Max Blumenthal, and the other guy, I can't recall their name, but they're doing remarkable, and we should support these people, support them. If our voices are too cowardly to stand up and speak out against the Israeli state, at least empower these individuals who are doing the job, that are speaking out, that are shutting down the Israeli Hasbara, that are shutting down the lies and the propaganda and the falsehoods that are emanating from the Israeli war machine and the Israeli propaganda machine and the Western propaganda machine. Empower their voices if your voices are too cowardly to speak up. Those dawah channels out there, I mean, I don't know what's going on. If you want to get clickbaits, you're concerned basically about this individuals. You know, there's a saying that weak minds discuss people and strong minds discuss ideas. And we're here to discuss ideas and break down ideologies. We're not here interested in people, interested in petty internal politics. There's a bigger picture out there that in Ramadan, I mean, I don't know, Muhammad, do an assessment. Do an assessment of all the major, and I'm talking about major dawah channels in the UK, those that have in excess of 1 million subscribers or 500,000 subscribers. Find out if over the past month in Ramadan, just go through all of them and you know their names and the individuals.
Let me make this clear, Yusuf. This is not, and I know some of the brothers who are in the dawah scene from Speaker's Corner. No one has dealt with the situation of Palestine and the suffering of the people of Gaza and the West Bank as much as we have been doing over the last year or so. We've been constantly doing these shows, and we've received strikes. We received emails. Our social media have been hacked. My Facebook, my Instagram, my TikTok, everything has been
Facebook is
hacked.
blocked. Your email was hacked. I remember you had this threat against your business. My Facebook is gone. I'm facing a cost, being brought by another organization, the NSPCA. I'm involved in a legal battle as I talk now. That's stress on my shoulder, linked to some content that I had produced on this particular channel. So people, and we've never once asked for money. We don't ask for money for the Palestinians. I know for the Coventry Faith Foundation, for the charity projects you've gone in Africa, we support that. But we don't ask people to come and go fund us or raise money for us. We just want you to share this content. Share this content and expose the lies and falsehood. That's why our numbers, and we've been shadow banned on YouTube. We've been shadow banned. Our numbers are depleting. Now, I mean, we had at one time when we first came on more than 1,000. Then it went down to 500. Now it's 45, 60, 50 viewers at a time. So clearly we're being shadow banned, and it's much easier to do with the smaller channels. It's difficult to do with a channel which has 500,000 plus subscribers, because inevitably you'll end up getting maybe 5,000, 10,000 views because you've got so many subscribers. But with channels that got 15,000 subscribers, which is fairly decent but still small, or my channel, which is very fledgling, it's very easy to totally shut you off. So all you can do is take the content. There's no copyright on it. We've been attacked many times for breaching copyright from Al Jazeera and so on. Well, that's their business. But take it, edit it, use it in whatever fashion you want to, and share the material out there. The one thing I want people to do is the material we share on this platform, use it, get access to it, and share it with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. Go to Speaker's Corner, share it en masse, all and sundry. If you don't have it, you can't access it, email Brother Muhammad. He's got his contact details. Email me, and we'll send you, or put a notification in the YouTube channel under the comment section. State what you want. We will send it to you at no cost. We will send you books at no cost. We'll send you a library of research material and scholarly studies on the situation of the genocide in Israel and Palestine studies, if you're interested, at no cost. Those books are hundreds of pounds at a time. We will give it to you at no cost, provided you take the material, share it out there, and educate the public.
Yeah, I just want to, when a Christian comes into the chat and don't really want to come onto the panel, and they make statements like man cannot do that for himself, but you believe Jesus was a man.
Bring him on. Bring the brother
No,
on.
they don't want to come on there. These individuals.
They don't want to come on.
Matthew is normally a sensible individual. Matthew is a sensible individual. But
I think Matthew
like
said.
That,
yeah, I think Matthew said hi to me just now. Yeah, I just wanted to say hi to him as well.
Matthew is a gentleman, but it just is contradiction. Man cannot. He was forced. If he's willing to do it, then he committed suicide. If he was unwilling to do it, then he was murdered. He was groomed to go onto the cross to kill himself and so forth. So it's a contradiction within itself, and the man-God aspect. But nevertheless, I really want to touch on, before we do end the show, and I've got about half an hour left. If people want to come on, feel free to come on. The aspects of Syria is another hot topic right now. And,
okay. Anyway, brothers,
Okay,
so I think I'm gonna have to leave now. All right. So just to add on, just as a closing remark, I would say, the situation in Palestine right now is very depressing and it's very urgent. I think we Muslims need to unite, and I think we need to say it out loud, and we need to, do whatever we can in order to spread the message. And one of the ways is, of course, let's spread what Brother Yusuf said, to share the link of this channel to everyone that you know about. To express the information about the issue, and I think if everyone unite on this at the very least, because we can't go there and commit to the resistance, but at the very least we can share the message, and inshallah I think we should send a loud and clear signal to this terrorist state that we will not stand for their nonsense, and we will resist them in any way possible, regardless whether it's through arms or it's through information and so on, right? So with that, I think I'm going to have to leave now, right, brother? So thank you to both of you for having me. All right.
You take care.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa
rahmatullah. Just before we kind of wrap it up, I just want to touch on the aspects of Syria. Myself, I'm kind of like on the fence with it right now to see what the outcome is. I know it's been several months now, but sometimes it might even take years, if not decades, to actually find out the real objectives of this Al-Qaeda operative or leader. So I'm kind of like on the fence with that right now. Recently on social media, we saw images, and I don't know how true they are, of innocent people getting gunned down, murdered, tortured, and much more. So, Brother Yusuf, I would love to pick your brain, especially on the Golan Heights and all, because Israel have started to take over parts of Syria. If you want to touch on that, and then inshallah we can move forward.
We will call it a day in the next couple of minutes, because I'm a bit tired. We're going for Sehri, well, not now, but I just want to get some rest before that, and I'm going to go get ready for work. But just so it becomes a bit of a challenge. But just to make the point that you're quite correct. All these minutes, the Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham was a former Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria that was also affiliated with ISIS in Syria. And over the past couple of weeks, we did see killings and assassinations, and which we also saw at the time in November last year when they came into power. But what was quite clear in November was that a lot of those images and the murders and the assassinations and the executions and some of the horrific pictures and imagery and videos you were seeing dates to 2015, 2016, and 2017, in that period when Assad was still in power. Apparently, these videos, and from what I can gather, it's happening right now. It's happening right now. So it's quite clear that Alawites are being targeted. It's quite clear that certain Sunnis are being targeted. There is a well-known Sunni cleric imam that was targeted and executed for speaking out against Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham. And I think the allegation is that some of the more kind of mainstream Sunni theologians within Damascus have basically questioned the kind of Khawarij background behind a lot of these, individuals that now form part and parcel of the government. Israel has taken over the entire Golan Heights, and the Syrian government and the Syrian militia are not targeting Israel. They are targeting the Syrian population. So the information has certainly come to Jolani, and Jolani has been somewhat candid and somewhat reserved, but he's clearly stated that if any violence has been committed, then it's something these individuals will be dealt with. One can only look at the future as to whether they will be dealt with. There's two ways to look at it. The one way is that whenever there's a change, whenever there's a regime change, or as you see in Syria and in apartheid South Africa, there's inevitably going to be some kind of bloodshed. So that could be a kind of a ripple effect whereby this is the shape, not acceptable, but this is the shape of how political change happens. It shouldn't happen because it appeared to be firstly peaceful, but bloodshed then happens, and then people start going, and then criminal elements form part of these militia networks, and they engage in their own particular trajectory in terms of how they want to either take revenge against people who they believe are Assad apologists, but they do it on their own. The other alternative is that this could be state policy, Syrian state policy. It's difficult to know whether it's Syrian state policy, but I won't put it behind it. The one thing which is quite clear is that Jolani, that's his nom de guerre, otherwise known as Ahmed al-Sharaa, he was a former Al-Qaeda, or at least an affiliate of Al-Qaeda commander. He's come in, and his position has clearly enabled Israel to establish a degree of hegemony in the state of Israel, in the Golan Heights. So immediately when Assad was deposed, the Israeli Air Force launched about 480 strikes, more than they've launched over the past 30 years in Syria. They totally destroyed the Syrian airfields, totally destroyed the air defenses, missile stockpiles, the drones, fighter jets, all of that, totally destroyed. They, in fact, destroyed 70 to 80% of Syria's strategic arsenal, meaning Syria's got no military firepower. They've got absolutely nothing to engage in terms of challenging what is happening, in terms of what Israel has done to take over. Then what happened in January, you have militia that were affiliated to HTS. They massacred, they killed about 13 military engineers. Now, these may have been at some point working for the Assad regime, but they were killed in cold blood. They were labeled, they were photographed, they were executed, and then they were placed at the entrance of a village, and all of the bodies had gunshot wounds to the head at near point blank range, meaning they were abducted, they were tied up, and they were executed. Now, they were not having any kind of combat roles, and they had already followed the so-called reconciliation process that was there with the HTS government. Question is, why were they killed? See, these are engineers, scientists, people that could be used for purposes of uplifting and benefiting society. Why were they executed? Then you have a situation now recently where there's been sectarian killings happening in the Hama, in the Homs countryside. Sharaa has acknowledged that it's happening, and he's now made the point that, look, people are going to be, if they've crossed the line, they will face the law. But he states that they are normal, and they may continue for 2 to 3 years. Now, as a leader, if you make the point that sectarian violence is normal and inevitable, that's a form of a tacit form of justification. So you have leading individuals, scientists, engineers, people who could uplift society there, that have been killed by masked men, by militia. If they are just simply criminal elements, that means HTS has no control over Syria. That means, what's the purpose of this regime change? Meaning you are just a fake government in Damascus that has no control. If, on the other hand, they are directly affiliated by HTS, and you've got a responsibility to rein them in and ensure these kind of killings don't happen. Because to truly create a pluralistic society, you have to have a situation where both Muslims, Sunnis, Shiites, Alawites, other sects, Christians, and even those who have no affiliation with any religion live side by side in equality under one particular government. That's the only way this will work. Otherwise, this entire system will work. So I'm not at all optimistic in terms of what is happening in Syria. And more than anything else, Israel's position is clearly being emboldened in having fully annexed the entire Golan Heights, having fully destroyed the entire Israeli military infrastructure. So, and then now you see these killings. What are the aim of these killings? Because you see, I've seen images on social media of women being killed, children being killed, men being killed. I mean, these are not soldiers. No Israelis have been killed. Have they targeted? Have these militias gone to the Golan Heights and targeted Israeli soldiers? Once you start doing that, then basically maybe people like us could get a wake-up call to say, look, we could then turn our heads to say something is being done. Has anyone targeted any militia out there, any criminal outlet? Have they anyone targeted any Israeli soldier? Not one. Not one Israeli soldier that is occupying Israel or within the Golan Heights region has been targeted or attacked. Not one. But those that have been attacked are, people in villages, people, Alawites, some Sunnis. I've seen imams being attacked, people in mosques that have been attacked. So it seems that clearly sectarian war is happening. And if Jolani is saying that this is an inevitability of what's happening and that this is not official government policy, it means he has no control. He's got no control over what's going on in Syria. If, on the other hand, it is government control militias, that means this is being deliberately done to inflict the worst kind of casualties and to totally lead Syria to a situation where it then becomes just simply a kind of a client state with no physical power. There's a kind of modicum of religiosity, but not actually religious in the practical implementation of justice. And the people that were killed, these military engineers that were killed and these scientists that were killed, these are the people that would have had a role to play. They could have been taken in by the Syrian government and they could have developed a weapons industry to protect the country from further occupation and attacks by Israel in the future. But by destroying engineers, by executing scientists, by executing some of these people in the community, these people who could really uplift society, you are emboldening the United States and its proxy allies in the Middle East and Israel to basically continue and further the occupation of the country. So you can have the so-called Islamic front that you're an Islamic party, but of what worth is it? Of what value is it? I mean, there are mosques in Tel Aviv. You know that? People don't know. There are masjids in Tel Aviv. But these imams, let them speak out against the Israeli regime inside those masjids in Tel Aviv. Let them speak out and see what happens to them. This is the whole point. You can have your Islam, you can have your Salah, you can have your ritualistic worship, but if it's not accompanied by any form of justice or, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. You enjoin what is right, you forbid what is wrong, you believe in Allah. Then you can be called the best of people. Otherwise, how can you be called the best of people? How can you describe yourself as the best of people if even at a superficial level you can't engage in doing what is right and forbidding what is wrong?
These kind of statements really baffle me when we got a sister here from America, Sandra. The US has tried to stay out of it for a longest time, right? So she's asking the question to us that America has tried to stay out of this kind of conflict for the longest time. They are the ones who are funding the conflict. They are the ones who started the conflict. It's just, this is what I was trying to say earlier, and this is not having a go at Sandra. I think some of the people or some individuals in America, they are grass fed, and they just, whatever they are told, they just chew it and absorb it and let it sink into their body. Because if you do a bit of research, America is the biggest criminal state next to, of course, Israel. They're like same cheeks of the same ass. They are brother and sister. They are the ones, the Mossad, the CIA, FBI, And sooner or later, all of these files will come out. Just like that particular individual, the famous whistleblower who was detained. I think he was released.
Julian Assange.
Exactly, yes.
But Sandra, the question I want to ask Sandra is forget all of that. Forget even the history. Just this week under Trump, they've killed 100 people in Yemen. Go onto the news sites. Go onto the Associated Press. I'm not going to bring it up now because I'm pretty exhausted and I'm going to close up. But go on to the Associated Press news site. The conservative figures are 53. The real figures are close to 100. There's been bombings on Syria against Houthis who have engaged in legitimate. The Houthis haven't killed anyone. They basically targeted those trade ships in support of their Palestinian brothers and in support of the Palestinian resistance. I take off my hat to the Houthis. But in claiming to have targeted the Houthis, Trump now has just killed more than 100 people. The vast majority are women and children in Yemen. So what are you talking about? The U.S. has basically stayed out. And for the entire year since the genocide began on the 7th of October, the U.S. has been selling armaments under the Biden administration, giving these 1,000-pound bombs to Israel, giving it to Israel, supporting the war, giving them military support, giving them financial support. The Trump administration has just simply created the charade that he's going to stop the war, but he's basically taking it to the next level. He's such a maniac that he's even talking about creating a kind of a Riviera.
This is a good point from Silent Jackal. The Ukrainians openly said they gave drones and drone operators to HTS, who has been funding Ukraine. America has been giving billions and trillions. The European
$350 billion. $350 billion. Where's that money gone to? I mean, I'll take up my hat to Zelensky having spoken out. I mean, as misguided as he is. But the point is, I mean, Ukraine has been funded extensively by the United States. So that's the situation. So Syria is a tragic situation. Look, we need to do a show on Syria again at some point in the future, immediate future, not late future, immediate future. There are massacres being committed. If the massacres are not being committed by HTS-affiliated militia, that means Jolani has lost the plot and he's not in control of Syria, which means that this regime change has been a total failure, if that is the case. If, on the other hand, he is behind it, or the HTS militia are behind the massacres, then this is basically a rapacious, evil regime as bad as the Assad state. No different. And this is the whole point. And if you allow it to enable and allow Israel to take over your country and you're killing scientists and engineers who could develop the weapons, military-industrial complex in your own country, then what does it say about you? You're not interested in real rule or real justice or really standing up on behalf of the Palestinian brothers. So you are not part of the resistance. You're anti-resistance. We've always stood in support of the resistance. We will always stand, despite how much people may hate us, wanting to shut us down, keeping us. But we will do this for the forthcoming future.
Of course, absolutely.
We'll be discussing other topics as well, but we will continuously discuss this and other social justice issues in the future that affect us and, justice seeking oppressed people in all parts of the world. That will be our mandate. Nobody's going to stop us.
Thank you, Brother Yusuf. I know you've got to go open your fast, so if you want to shoot off, you can, and I'll just have to
I'm tired, but take care, inshallah.
Inshallah, we'll soon catch up soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, the only reason I brought up this verse, it came to my mind straight away, this particular verse from the book of John. There is no statement in the Bible where Jesus calls himself God. Nowhere. But yet in this book, the Gospel of John, he calls himself a man. Jesus is a man. Can you read it here, brothers and sisters? A man who has told you the truth, which I heard from God. So I really want to understand the bipolar character of Jesus, peace be upon him, when it comes to the Bible. Either he knew he was God, or he didn't know he was God, or I've recently watched this movie on Netflix. I think it's called Mirror, where this particular character has different characters and he plays the role really well. And he has split personalities. He thinks he's a woman. He thinks he's a young child. But hats off to this particular actor. He does really well. So this is why I don't understand when you bring verses to us in the chat that Jesus, peace be upon him, is God. And nowhere in the Bible he says, I am God. And we as Muslims and the brothers and sisters in the chat, we follow a lot of Dawah channels. I'm sure we do. And we always hear the same arguments, right? But there's contradictions. Just like the Qadianis, they bring contradictions where Mirza Ghulam Ahmad says he follows Jesus, peace be upon him. And then he says, I am Jesus ibn Maryam. So there's contradictions. So you never can believe anybody or any book that has contradictions. And this is why the Quran puts a challenge out to you, to the non-Muslims. If this book was other than from Allah, you will find contradictions within it. So brothers and sisters, I love to share your thoughts. I love to kind of like get your thoughts on this. I've got a couple of more minutes. If anybody wants to come up and say a few words, feel free. This is your opportunity before we wrap it up. But once again, just a quick reminder, my YouTube channel has received many strikes. I have been threatened via email to close down my podcasts regarding the situation in Palestine. My social media apps from Facebook, from Instagram, and other apps have been taken off me. So we got Matthew joining us now, so hopefully he can explain this verse for us. Matthew is a very nice individual. Matthew, welcome to the show. Long time no see, my brother. I can't hear you. Oh, he's gone. So yeah, we'll wait for Matthew. I never kicked him off. I think he's probably resetting his mic. We've got about 8 minutes before we wrap the show up. And maybe this will be the most interesting part of the show if those brothers and sisters like a bit of discussion. Brothers and sisters, I want to know your comments on, I don't want to mention names, this aspect of GoFundMe. I've recently seen a couple of streams where individuals are asking for money, and another individual is asking the other individual, where is the money going? Why have you raised the target to 35k, now to 50k? I'd love to understand from you guys. I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think of it? And I love, because I know people come into the chat, they'd like to type, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Mike, you're not banned from my channel. I've not banned you from CovFF. By the way, thank you, Mike. I have a Rumble account, Abu Shuaib. So if you've got Rumble, please go to my Rumble account to subscribe to Rumble, Abu Shuaib. I think Matthew is backstage, but he's got no camera at this time. Yes, sister, please tell me, what do you think about this? Mike's come and join us again. Mike, I'm going to bring you on now. Okay, I can see you. Your camera's on. I'm going to bring you on. Love to hear from you regarding the topic of Gaza, and then we can get Matthew on. In fact, we get all of us at the same time. I think it'll be a triad of panelists. Mike, I can't hear you. How you doing, my brother? Long time no see.
Hey, how's it going? Everything's good here?
I'm okay, brother. I can't complain. I'm just going to... I got about 5 minutes. I'm just on my way to the gym now. I'm going to do a little workout. Matthew, nice to see you, brother, but I can't hear you. I think you've been muted. You're still muted, brother. You got that. There you go.
How is that, Mohammed?
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I kind of like touched on with you, and I don't want to get into a deep debate about it. where Jesus, peace be upon him, calls himself a man.
Yep.
From my knowledge, I've not ever come across a verse where Jesus calls himself a God, that he is God. But yet, in the book of John, he
Yep.
calls himself a man. I am a man. So, yeah, I'd love to hear your breakdown of that, if you don't mind. Can you hear me, Matthew?
Well, first, Mohammed, if you'd give me a little bit of liberty, just a little bit. Yeah. You know, when you try to hurry a computer, it's like pushing a donkey, right? So,
Yeah.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but you
Well,
do freeze
first,
sometimes.
before
but
we
it's
get
fine.
into that, sure, I think it's my connection, but I just want to first start off with, number one, I think I like the comment that the one fella said, we all want peace, right? So before I delve, I don't think I have a lot of time today for the theological arguments, which are important because they back up our other arguments. But I want peace for the Palestinians. I want peace for the Jewish people. I want peace for Muslims. And, you know, as we debate these things on YouTube, why I like this channel is because generally it's done in a spirit of peace, and getting to Christ being a man, that's the whole point of the gospel, is that Christ walked in our shoes, that he faced injustice. And I noticed the speaker before was really upset with the injustices he's seeing, which I am too. And I'm going to be, I won't play the hypocrite here. There's different injustices that fire me up. But at the end of the day, we want all injustice dealt with. And that's where the gospel, you know, comes in, is that there's coming a day, as told in Isaiah and Revelation, that there'll be no more tears, no more crying, and no more death. And so what is the ultimate solution? And, you know, and I'm the first one of the first ones, probably not the first one, but to criticize Israel. As a Christian, I would never say that Israel is without fault. I've just finished reading Jeremiah. What did God do to the Israelites in Jeremiah? He exiled them because of their gross sin. And that's, you know, one of the reasons I believe in the Bible is because it speaks to the main issue, which is sin. And as our other gentleman that you had on the panel earlier was saying, he's mad at these various Islamic groups. Now, we could argue whether they're truly Islamic or not, but they're infighting. They're not doing their job, right? And they're committing sin. And so at the root of all of this, and not to oversimplify it and underhumanify it, the problem is sin. And and it's going to go on forever until we deal with the sin problem. And so, you know, that's why as Christians, we look to Christ, is that ultimately...
Yeah,
sure, you wanted to jump on?
Yeah, I actually I semi agree with you there. Sin is the one.
Okay, well, we agree on a lot.
Yeah, but the main sin for us is shirk. Shirk is associating partners with. That's the greatest sin for us. As for minor sins, for me, like maybe getting angry or maybe me a bit of road rage or something like that. Those kind of sins, if you truly repent, you can be forgiven. But if you die on associating partners with God, like saying that Jesus is God or this idol has some type of divine attribute, then that's sin. And if you die upon that sin, there's no paradise for you. You're in hellfire. As for other sins, like, for example, like I said to you, being sometimes you're angry or you might do something out of a mistake and then you regret it. Those kind of sins, you can be forgiven for that if you repent and so forth. Even like stealing or stuff like that. If you commit a sin like that, first of all, you ask for repentance. And the person that you stole it from, you ask for their forgiveness, or you replace it, or you give something similar back as to rule out the sin and promise not to do it again. So I totally understand and I agree. I really do. And I'm sorry, Matthew, I don't want to speak for too long. I was actually listening to Ma'idah, the Surah Ma'idah today, regarding Cain and Abel, when one of the brothers killed his other brother, and that took me to tears, because that's when murder came into effect.
Yes,
killing came into effect, and the other brother, who was willing to, he was willing to die because he didn't want to fight back. He said, "Look, if you want to kill me, you can kill me, but I fear my Lord, and I know what the pleasure of God is for me. But as for you, you are going to be in some serious trouble for murdering me." So I totally understand that, Matthew. I think I agree with that. I really do.
No, actually,
go on. Sorry, Matthew. Go on.
And sorry, because I just know we're all limited for time, and my apologies for jumping on late. But I think I would agree with you with the concept of shirk. Absolutely. Of course, as Christians, we're going to come at it from a different. We're going to come at it from the Trinitarian perspective. I fully agree. We shouldn't equate anything with God other than God. And that's, we'd have to have a stream on that. But if you get back to Cain and Abel, this is why I believe the Bible, because if we look at the story of Cain and Abel in Genesis, both Cain and Abel believed in God. Both Cain and Abel realized that God needed a sacrifice. Both brought God a sacrifice, but one was rejected. And to me, this is symbolic, and this is of Muslims and Christians, more so Muslims and Christians, and I would say even modern day Jews, is both Muslims and Christians realize that sin has some kind of a price, but we're disagreeing on that price. So each of us on the day of judgment is going to stand before God, and we're going to have the so-called sacrifice, whether you call it your good works, your repentance, or in the case of Christians, by trusting in Christ's vicarious atonement. So someone's going to be wrong there. And so, just something to think about. Why would God have that in the scripture? And especially the brother who brought the right sacrifice was killed, was murdered by his brother. So a lot to think about there. But, with regards to the issue that I would seriously, I want peace for those in the Middle East. This is real blood. I work in a hospital, Muhammad, and within the last year or two, I seen a young, I believe it was a Muslim girl, hurt quite bad, her leg, and it's heartbreaking. I don't want to see that, and you don't want to see that. So at the end of the day, good on you for having a channel that allows us to bring this diversity of opinions, and people can think this through. I wanted to use this quote in a different debate, but I've just read the Quran front to back for Ramadan, not to impress anybody. But there's a quote in the Quran that I read: "The ink of a scholar has more value than the blood of a martyr." And, as we are coming together as people, the Quran says that Allah has given us intellect. I think we're using our intellect. We're hammering at these issues, and that's good. And without going on any longer, I'll just leave it at that until we have another time with a more thorough time frame.
Matthew, like I said, you've always been a gentleman when you've come on this show, and I appreciate that. There's some aspects of your thought process I disagree in, and there's quite a lot I actually do agree in. I actually think Islam, Christianity, and Judaism in its core is very similar. But we have differences, and the only way we can work through these differences is understanding each other in a better way and living in peace and harmony. Like I said, you've got experience working in a hospital. I actually worked, I was a soldier in the British Army for about 7 years, and 10 years I was working for the United Nations, and I was deployed all over the world. Some occasions when I was in Cyprus, which I was based twice, I did 2 tours there. We had to dig up mass graves to identify skeletons, individuals, to give the message to their loved ones, even though these murders or this killing was taking place in the 1970s. So of course the bodies have been decomposed. It's just basically a bit of material, some flesh, some bones, and the smell of it. It's very difficult to explain the smell of decomposed.
I work at a hospital.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting, Mohammed? Sorry to cut you off, but my stepdad was a soldier in Cyprus in the 70s.
Mm.
And he's got some very tough stories from there.
Yes, yeah, and sorry, Mike, I'll get you on soon. I do apologize. There's some aspects of the army which is fun, adventurous, and very exciting, especially for an alpha male or a male. But there's some aspects of joining the military that you are going to see the ugly side of humanity, and you get to see extremes in real time of what we do to each other in the name of God, in the name of what I believe in and what I stand for. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, a child, an elderly man, elderly woman. If you are against what I believe, you must be killed. You must be, moved away or eventually killed in reality. And this is what I find very interesting from the story of Cain and Abel. Cain's jealousy, really kind of like an anger, led him to kill Abel, his brother. And this is why the aspects of murder and anger is very, very serious in our religion. This is why we say we shouldn't make a judgment or give somebody advice when we are angry. This is from the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that if you are angry, sit down. Don't stand up, sit down. Just calm yourself down. And whoever can control his anger is the strongest amongst you all, which is very, very profound, because one of the reasons I can interact with you and other people and I don't seem to get angry is because I've seen with my own eyes of what people do to each other in the name of religion. And as a Muslim, I understand your viewpoint. I understand Mike's viewpoint, and I respect you for it, but I do not agree with it. And I'm happy to leave it there as long as you're willing to shake my hand. I'm willing to shake your hand. There's no issues with that whatsoever. But once you start to
absolutely, I'm willing to shake.
Once you start to offend the faith, or you start to offend the tenets of your faith, I can disagree with you about the divinity of Jesus. You can disagree with me about the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad. As long as there's no offensive words used, and if I've said anything earlier on, forgive me for it, because we also believe Jesus, peace be upon him, is the Messiah, born from the Virgin Mary, peace be upon her. We also believe in that. So, I try to refrain from using anything hostile towards the prophets and messengers. But I'm going to end it there because I can continue and I need to hit the gym in about a couple of minutes. Mike's with us. Mike is a very interesting personality. Mike, get you on. It's nice to see you, Mike. It looks like really sunny out there. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing great. Yes, I'm in the Sunshine State, so it's sunny.
I need to move there. I need to get my green card and move over to you, Mike, because the weather here in the UK is not the best.
No, we've had beautiful weather this whole winter, if you will. Never got below 40 Fahrenheit. But
wow.
Anyways, well, you guys covered a lot, so I don't know where to start with. I guess if we go
talk
back
to us about what's your aspects of the breaking of the ceasefire in Palestine and the massacre that has been taking place over the last couple of days of over 500 to 600 people being murdered by the IDF. What's your thoughts on that?
I haven't been paying that much attention just lately. I know there was a ceasefire. It looks like, I think a former IDF guy, has pretty much let the cat out of the bag that they They want to create that corridor right down the middle. They want to cut Gaza in half. Trump coming out with this crazy, let's get everybody out and we'll rebuild it, make it like Vegas or something. I don't know what I think maybe his play is just to get us away from having to refinance anything. You know, I mean, I know, the Israelis call it mowing the grass or whatever.
Mowing the lawn, yeah.
Yeah, mowing the lawn. You get this mass destruction of Gaza, and then America, Europe, the Gulf states pitch in, they rebuild it. Nothing really changes. You know, Hamas pops up here and there, does something. This was a big one, obviously, and they've pretty much wiped out all of Gaza from what I've seen. So,
there's a question for you, Mike. Did you vote for Trump?
I did vote for Trump. I'm a Republican, yes.
There you go.
I didn't vote for him in 2016. I thought he was too crazy. I voted for the libertarian, Matt Johnson.
So you thought he was crazy in 2016. Do you think he's okay now? He's took his medication? And
no, it looks like he's gotten crazier. His first stint wasn't that bad. It wasn't that crazy. I guess, when you're a lame duck, it makes things different. These tariffs he's throwing around.
Yeah, tell me, Mike, we're here in Europe, right? And we hear about these tariffs and stuff. I'm sure it's going to have a negative effect on the economy and the job sector in America, because you start putting tariffs on exporting and importing items from other countries. What about if they start putting tariffs on your goods? It's going to be a negative outcome. What do you think, Mike?
Sure, and the markets reacted poorly. We just had a jobs report come out, and it wasn't too bad for January. I think it was revised upward. He was going to put the tariffs on like March 4th. So, I make most of my money now in the stock market. It tanked for half a day, and then he's like, "All right, we're postponing them for a month," and then he postponed them again. Then he hit Canada with 25% on steel and aluminum. I looked it up. We consume 6 million metric tons of aluminum a year, and we only produce 900,000. So I'm not sure where he thinks we're going to get our aluminum from. About 30% of our imports come from Canada. The problem is he's somewhat right in that we have been, I wouldn't say treated unfairly by the world, but we've been too kind to much of the world with our tariffs. They impose tariffs on us, and we have much lesser tariffs. Like his first stint, he talked about the Europeans and cars, right? So the Europeans tariff our cars at 10%. We tariff their cars at 2.5%. So actually, I was kind of interested when you walked through Coventry there. I saw a few more Fords than I thought I would. I was surprised, especially vans. I think they were mostly like Ford little white delivery vans or something. That was good to see. But like in America, I was driving across the bridge one day, and I remember looking, and trucks, Ford and Chevy still does well in trucks, but I counted like 42 cars coming across, and 2 of them were American. They're all Toyotas. They're all Europeans, the BMWs, the Mercedes, the higher end stuff. I don't even know if Ford's making hardly any cars anymore. Buick's still around and stuff. I'm not even sure what happened.
Here in the UK, we used to have like a massive industry of car productions, like Peugeot, Ford, and they all just been moved to other countries because labor is a lot cheaper, and and then of course once they are made in different countries, then they can set their own tariffs if we want to buy them here in the UK. And cars are quite expensive here in the UK. Well, a lot of things are expensive. I just want to move on to something to you, because I know coming from America, you see Trump with the Ukrainian leader, how harsh he was with the Ukrainian leader. And it was quite interesting to see that, right? How he kind of like belittled him. And then when it came to the Israeli leader, who is a criminal according to the courts, international law of court, I don't know if you accept that verdict, he's welcomed. He's actually even asked to sit down. You see Trump move the chair for him. Why do you think the American or Trump is so connected at the hips with the Israeli prime minister? But on the opposite side of the coin, he seems to really point fingers and cause the Ukrainian leader a dictator, and much worse. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know, in this first term, he moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, which we've been threatening to do for 30 years or something. Obviously, his son-in-law is Jewish. I don't know how much influence he could have on him. Kushner, Justin Kushner, whatever his name is. And his daughter converted to Judaism. And Trump, there's no doubt he likes strong men, and I think he sees Bibi kind of as a strong man. I mean, I don't know how many times has Bibi been in and out as prime minister. He's been around as long as I can remember, I think since the 80s or something.
Recently I've been watching the news. I know the Israeli parliament really want to go after Bibi now. They're trying to get him detained. There's like thousands of people outside Tel Aviv right now protesting against him because what he is saying, he's learning what Trump has done with certain judges in America. That Bibi's doing the same thing with certain judges in Israel. Anybody who seems to be against him, that he's trying to like get them out the way. So even in Israel right now, there's a huge protest taking place against Bibi because they don't like him because he's actually up for corruption charges. And as soon as he steps down, or they want him to step down, and if he does, he'll be arrested straight away for corruption charges. But then what I don't understand, where does America get the money? Where do you get the money to give billions and trillions, initially to Ukraine and then to Israel? But when I watch images on YouTube, I don't know how true they are. You can tell me because you're an American, of people living in the streets, tents in the streets in America, all over the country and different states. How true is that? Do you ever see that yourself?
Oh, sure. Here in Florida, we've had in St. Pete. I used to live in St. Petersburg, Florida. In the 90s, we had huge tent cities. We had a huge homeless population here because, of course, the weather's nice and stuff. California has a huge homeless population. Those, RVs and people with tents, and housing has gotten so expensive too. But part of the problem was in the 70s, we emptied our insane asylums after, the movie and the book One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We threw out the baby with the bathwater. We got rid of the institutions because, people were mistreated in them and whatnot. So we went to this uber liberal, you can't imprison somebody just because he's crazy. But now they're just out on the streets, and a lot of them are druggies and drunks too as well. So
you say majority of the people who are homeless, they are like possible drug addicts, or you're not saying they were like forced out their homes because they couldn't keep up with the mortgage, or they couldn't keep up with the upkeeping of their homes, and they were forced. A lot of them VAs, a lot of veterans, army veterans, and you hear a lot of stories of them, ending up homeless because they don't get the initial support, financial and other type of support. Is that the case with a lot of the veterans also?
Well, a lot of the veterans have, PSTD and mental health issues.
PTSD,
and, they turn to drinking a lot and stuff. I'm sure some people get evicted and are homeless, but those are usually short term. They did that in the 80s. They tried to make this thing that, all these Americans are one paycheck. We're all just one paycheck away from being homeless. I remember a guy on the radio one time, he was talking about in Cleveland, when they redeveloped downtown Cleveland, somebody went out and he was interviewing some of the guys who, lived under an overpass, and there was like 4 of them. And they're like, oh yeah, in a good month, we can make, $3,500 panhandling. And the guy's like, well, go get an apartment, and people were calling in and like, 4 men shouldn't have to live together if they don't want to in an apartment. He's like, well, they live under a bridge right now. What are you talking about? So, I'm a conservative. I think the liberals make too many excuses for some of the homeless. Now they call them unhoused. You're not allowed to call them bums anymore or homeless. You got to call them unhoused. And I feel bad for the ones who have mental issues, mental health issues.
I see the same thing here in the UK, and we've got a couple of more minutes because I need to get to the gym. We see the same thing here now with the Labour Party. They've cut the Labour Party is like I think it's probably like the Joe Biden kind of party or the Kamala Harris party, where they are a bit more lenient. But recently they've just cut back on all benefits, like if you are getting some like a disability benefit or other type of benefit that you are unable to work, they are cutting all of these benefits back now. So they're trying to force you to get a job. Even if it's a low paid job, they want you to get back into the market. But this is the same party, maybe 50, 60 years ago, introduced the benefit laws in that, people should be entitled to benefits, right? But now they realize, because the bank is quickly emptying, because we gave so much money to Ukraine. We've gave so much money to other countries. And even now, here in my city of Coventry, there's not a main road where you see 2 to 3 people begging for money. It's not rare to see somebody sleeping on the bench. We do have hostels here. We have like an organization called the Salvation Army. We have like a homeless care shelter and so forth. But you still see people sleeping on benches. But the job market is very good here in the UK. If you want to get a job, you can get a job. It might not be the income that you might prefer, but you can get an income. So I do see like the mirror effect of here in the UK and the US. I definitely see that. And I don't know what, me personally, I know you're slightly older than me with respect. I think you're slightly older than me. How do you see everything playing out from your history, your life experience? Where do you think the US will end in the next 20, 30 years? Do you think we'll have a change of government, or do you think it'll go more extreme towards the right? That we have to start like evicting certain nationalities out of America to save money. Like recently you had those South Americans, I think, detained, sent to like prisons and so forth. They weren't even charged, but they're apparently gang members or so forth, or some cartel. So what do you see in the near future, Mike?
Yeah, well, I think we're already to the far right. I don't think we'll go much farther than this. Like, those are Venezuelans. We flew them down to El Salvador. I don't know if you know the president of El Salvador. He's seen as a big strong man. He's cracking down. He built this mega prison. And so now I guess we're outsourcing some of our gang criminals to them. I mean, if you do the whole Central American gang thing, if you go back to the 80s, it's very interesting that it was immigrants into LA who learned how to be gang members that we then deported and then established the LA gang type structure down in, the triangle, Nicaragua, Guatemala, El Salvador. And now they're coming back up. And of course, MS-13 is extremely brutal as a gang. And I don't know who these THS guys are or something. I guess that's the Venezuelan guys.
But are they citizens of America? Do they have the American passport, or what's their status? Because you can't just kick somebody out of your country or deport them to the land of origin if they've got passports or they're American citizens. Like recently with Andrew Tate, of course, him coming into America, he had American passport. But yet there's some people in Florida who kind of like didn't want him to come to America. But even though he's got a passport. So I find that quite strange.
Yeah, I don't think any of those guys were Americans. I assume they were all illegal aliens.
Okay.
We did back in, I think it was the 50s, and Trump actually references, called Operation Wetback, which is considered a very racist term now about Mexicans, that they swim across the river. They called them wetbacks. But Eisenhower deported a bunch of people. If you ever watched the it's just Cheech, not Cheech and Chong movie, Born in East LA. It's where he gets deported and he's like, "Hey man, I'm from East LA. What are you doing?" And they ship him back to Mexico. You guys were going to ship a bunch of Africans to Rwanda, right? Even though you didn't know where they're coming from.
Absolutely.
Right? Well, we don't know if you're Nigerian or not, but we got to deal with Rwanda now. Rwanda
anybody, not just Africans, anybody who came into the UK illegally on these rubber boats or whatever, and the channel. You can actually swim the channel. Some people have swum the channel from here to France, to Calais. but just as a challenge, just to side note. But the problem is, we paid Rwanda millions of pounds to build structures, hostels, hotels, infrastructure, other buildings to house these illegal migrants. But what happened, Mike? Conservative Rishi Sunak, he lost. Keir Starmer from the Labour Party took over, and Keir Starmer was against that. So all those millions that we gave Rwanda, if not billions, the Rwandans are laughing their heads off right now. They're thinking, we've got this money for free. And the funny thing is that if I don't know if you're a football star, you see like sponsorships, right? And there's a football team called Arsenal. Their sponsor was Visit Rwanda as a tourist kind of like promotion thing. And I'm thinking, you got a football team, a very famous football team, promoting Rwanda as a place to go and visit and explore as a tourist, and then you got the UK government sending people there for free. And I'm like, if I can go to Rwanda for a holiday, I'll go. Do you know what I mean? But I just find it really baffling because I see the same mistakes that the UK government is making. I can see the mirror image of what the Americans are doing. And I think the UK will be broken in 20 years. I think, I'll be honest with you right now, Mike, everything right now is running on fumes here in the UK. Some local governments have ran out of money. They cannot pay the bin men to clear the bins. Like if there's another city next to me called Birmingham, the bin men have gone on strike. I don't know if you've seen it on the news. So there's like refuse bags up to, stacked up for weeks and ends. And now the weather's getting hot. That's going to stink. Right. So they've gone bankrupt. The Birmingham City Council, they've got no more money to pay the bin men to clear the rubbish. So they're running out of money. And my city, Coventry, is not far away. I can see it happening here in Coventry. I do think, Mike, and this is not me speaking as a Muslim or somebody from the Islamic faith. I'm speaking as a Briton. I was born here in the UK. My parents were born here. I think this country is doomed. I think a lot of Western countries are doomed. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm going to give the last chapter to you. How do you feel? Do you think the West is in a quick demise, a decline? But I can see other countries like the Middle Eastern countries hosting massive events now, like the Riyadh season or concerts and other such things. But the West, for me, seems to be in a quick decline. Final thought to you, Mike.
Sure. Well, and I was watching Bill Maher the other day, and he's saying, the pendulum always swings too far. That's the problem. We never settle in the middle. It goes far left. Like you say, we want to feed everybody, we want to house, and you end up with all these homeless people. We opened our borders to immigration. We got 20 million probably illegals in the last 20 years. Even Reagan said, we'll build a wall, and he did a blanket amnesty in the 80s. And I don't know if you ever heard of the Muriel boat lift, but
we did the same thing here, Mike. We did the same thing here.
And then, the Republicans like the cheap labor. The Democrats like them because their kids are going to vote for them later. Although now some of the Hispanics are moving to the right, especially on the border states. And so I think it'll generally figure itself out. A lot of these social issues, they seem huge. They're really not. To me, our biggest issue is our debt. You asked where we get all this money from. We print it. I don't know why. I don't know how we can still print it, but we do.
But surely that brings down the value of the dollar. Doesn't it bring down the value?
It should, but the dollar's still pretty strong. I mean, the yen, it was funny because I looked up the Japanese years ago. They've been at 200%. Their debt has been at 200% of their GDP. Their GDP has been stuck at like 4 trillion, and their debt's at like 10 trillion now. And they still are a big donor nation. They still give money away. In the 80s, they were a lender nation. They held a lot of our debt. The problem with the Japanese was they didn't spend enough money, and now, of course, they're population is declining quickly, and they don't want to import people. They don't like the gaijin, they don't want foreigners in there, but they still somehow can print money. When Greece almost brought down the EU, if you looked it up, their debt was only like 50% of their GDP. And it's like, well, why is this a crisis? Now the Germans got to bail them out, and like, well, they can't print money. Nobody will take their money. Well, their debt wasn't even at 100% of their GDP. Our debt's now 30 trillion. I think our GDP is up to like 27 trillion or something crazy, but our debt's over 30 trillion. It's now over 100% of our GDP. We spend, I couldn't believe it when, Musk said, I'll cut 2 trillion from the budget. I'm like, what the hell's our budget? I remember when Clinton had a $1 trillion budget. How are you going to cut 2 trillion? I looked it up. 6.2 trillion is our budget. Yeah. We take in like 4 trillion a year. Well, that doesn't work. So that to me is what's going to bring us down. If we lose our standing as the petrodollar, there's all this talk about the BRICS bringing in their own reserve currency, or even if everything goes to gold. That's why gold's like at over $3,000 an ounce. But it'll be money that brings us down. I don't think all these social issues will. We've generally absorbed our immigrants pretty well, and push them out to where they're needed. And usually the ones who come here want to work. Yeah, I think we do have a problem with too many Americans who don't want to work, and giving too much dole out, that we give them more money than, like you said, there's a ton of low-paying jobs out there. Yeah. But if people can make almost as much money, sitting on welfare, even the Scandinavians are starting to roll their welfare back. They find, I forget, I think the Dutch or something had, they'll give you 3 years of unemployment or something. And then they looked at it and they cut it back to like 30 months. And guess what? Everybody found a job at like 34 months. When they cut it back to 30 months, everybody found a job at like 28 months. Sit there and collect money.
Absolutely, Mike. Mike, it's been a pleasure talking to you, mate. It really has. And we should do more of these shows, just have like a little chin wag. Sister Sandra asked me when the next live is. I think my channel has been linked to another channel where they do streams of the planned streams they do. And myself, I think after Ramadan, so about another 9 to 10 days, I'm hoping to get back on to doing more live streams. But yeah, stay tuned, brothers and sisters. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Like I said, I have been given 3 strikes because of my topics of Palestine and so forth. So please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's been a fascinating show, to be honest, and it's really nice to end on a positive note. People criticize Mike, right, guys? But every time I'm speaking with Mike, he's very polite, very respectful. Maybe to other people, and if you come across rude to him, he might fire back. But Mike has never fired any shots at me, so I appreciate you, Mike. Matthew, who came on early, Matthew, thank you for joining me. And the brothers, of course, who joined me earlier on. May Allah bless you, and hopefully you have a very successful Ramadan. I think about 9 to 10 days left, and then we'll hopefully be fully charged, and we'll be up and running on a regular basis doing more streams. This is your brother Muhammad Abu Shu'aib from CovFF, and joined from the other side of the pond, it was Mike. And Mike, pleasure having you on once again. Greetings of peace to Mike and everybody else in the chat. Assalamu alaikum. Mike, repeat after me. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam.
Well done, Mike.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak. There you go, guys. Next will be the Shahada, hopefully. But nevertheless, thanks for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. أشهد أن لا